Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is the show where we take a whole stack of sources, research, notes, everything we can find.
And really boil it down.
Exactly. Distill it into the most important, insightful, and sometimes, yeah, pretty surprising bits of knowledge, all hopefully really useful for you. Today, we're taking a deep dive into something that, well, let's be honest, probably hits home for just about everyone at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
It's that feeling. Why do we seem to get in our own way? Even when we know better.
Right.
You set a goal, you start building some momentum, you actually feel like you're making progress.
Yeah, things are looking up.
And then, seemingly out of absolutely nowhere, you trip yourself up. You do something that completely undermines it all.
It's that classic, oh so frustrating feeling, isn't it? That
Yeah.
one's step forward, two steps back.
Exactly. In
Yeah.
personal growth, maybe career goals, even in relationships. It pops up everywhere.
It really does.
So, for this deep dive, we're calling it the human glitch. Why we self-sabotage and how to stop.
The human glitch. I like that framing because it really is such a common thread. That sense of inexplicable self-sabotage, undermining our own best intentions.
It makes no logical sense sometimes.
None at all, on the surface. But
Yeah.
think about it. Like a tiny daily choice. Something that feels totally insignificant in the moment.
Like hitting snooze or grabbing that extra biscuit.
Exactly. Or putting off that awkward phone call, maybe. These tiny things, repeated over time, can genuinely steer your life towards a completely different destination than the one you intended.
Yeah, I've read about that. It's fascinating. Like success or, well, the lack of it. It's often not about some massive life-changing event.
Right, not usually. It's the cumulative product of these everyday habits, these small, consistent decisions we make, often without even thinking.
Absolutely. So it's less about where you are right now.
Yeah.
Maybe you feel like you're doing great, or maybe you feel totally stuck.
Mm-hmm.
What really matters, according to this idea, is the trajectory. Where are your current habits actually pointing you?
That's the key. You could be a millionaire, but if you're consistently spending way more than you earn, well, that trajectory isn't looking good.
Right. Versus someone who might be broke right now, but is managing to save even like a tiny amount each month.
That person's on a path towards financial freedom, even if it feels incredibly slow day to day. It's those small course corrections. They add up.
Like steering a huge ship just 1 degree at a time. Eventually, you end up somewhere totally different.
Precisely. But that one step forward, two steps back thing, it takes a real emotional toll, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely. It leaves you feeling like a failure, maybe. Or just completely hopelessly stuck.
Yeah, like you're just spinning your wheels.
Yeah.
You can even get into this mindset where suffering seems limitless, like you're just doomed to keep hitting the same wall, maybe even harder each time.
Ugh, yeah. But what if? What if there's another way to look at it?
Exactly. What if this whole pattern isn't actually about you being weak or fundamentally flawed or lacking willpower? What if it's something predictable?
And that's where we land on the core idea for this deep dive. The proposition is this. Self-sabotage isn't some deep moral failing or a conscious choice to mess things up.
Right. It's more like a predictable psychological pattern.
That's what we're calling the human glitch, like a bug in our internal operating system. An inherent, often totally unconscious part of how our minds just work. It's not about you being broken. It's about understanding the code, the programming.
That's such a crucial distinction, isn't it? Because it immediately shifts the focus away from self-blame and judgment.
Which is totally unproductive.
Totally. And moves us towards curiosity and understanding. There's this idea, quite profound actually, that our very character, the personality we present to the world, can sometimes be seen as a kind of vital lie, a constructed limitation.
A vital lie. What does that mean?
It's like a deep-seated denial, maybe of our own responsibility, or maybe our inherent worth. It's a structure we build that often works against what we consciously say we want.
Okay. So the glitch isn't something we choose to fail with.
Not consciously, no. It's a deeper, unconscious pattern. You could think of it like a suit of armor.
Okay. Armor protects you.
It provides a false sense of safety, maybe, or worthiness, but only temporarily. And ultimately, that armor, while it might shield us from, say, uncomfortable truths in the short run.
It restricts you.
Exactly. It profoundly constricts our growth. It leads directly to those self-defeating behaviors, those unsatisfying relationships. That lie we tell ourselves, often without even realizing it, oh, my life is fine, or it's not my fault, it's them. That's a key symptom of the glitch.
It's a defense mechanism. Trying to avoid facing something uncomfortable about ourselves.
Precisely. A desperate attempt, really.
And this just brings that amazing quote from Jung right to the forefront, doesn't it?
Oh, yes. Which one?
Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate.
So powerful. And that really sums up our whole mission today, I think.
Yeah. The goal of this deep dive is to try and bring these hidden, often automatic patterns of self-sabotage out into the light.
To demystify them, see them as these predictable glitches, not character flaws.
Right. So we can finally start, debugging them, taking the wheel back and actually controlling our own trajectory.
Yeah, starting the debugging process.
Okay, so let's try and unpack this human glitch a bit more. In this first section, we really want to dig into the core psychology behind these patterns, what's driving them. And often, like right at the heart of it all, it's fear, isn't it?
Fear is huge. Specifically, that fundamental fear of the unknown. And sometimes, kind of paradoxically, the weird allure of known pain.
The devil you know.
Exactly that. Our brains, you see, they're basically hardwired with this innate alarm company. The amygdala is the main player here.
Right, the emotional center.
And it's constantly scanning the environment, internally and externally, for threats. But this system is built for speed, not necessarily deep analysis.
Get out first, ask questions later.
Pretty much. Think of it like a super-sensitive smoke detector. When it senses danger, and that could be a real physical threat like a car swerving towards you, or it could be a symbolic threat. Something that challenges our self-esteem, our dignity, our sense of control. Yeah. Maybe even just being contradicted in a meeting.
Ah, okay. So not just lions and tigers.
Definitely not. When that alarm goes off, it sends these urgent, often quite bewildering messages shooting across the entire brain.
Like hitting the panic button.
It mobilizes our fight-or-flight hormones, gets our muscles ready, and even makes our memory systems frantically search for any relevant past experiences related to this kind of emergency.
Wow. So it all happens incredibly fast.
Super fast. And this rapid emotional response often leaves our slower, more rational mind, the prefrontal cortex, completely playing catch-up. We find ourselves reacting and only later thinking, whoa, what just happened? Why did I snap like that?
So it's that primal, instinctive thing kicking in before we even get a chance to think it through rationally.
Precisely. And tied into this is something psychologists call the orienting reflex.
Orienting reflex.
Yeah. When we encounter something genuinely incomprehensible or completely unexpected, something that just doesn't fit our current mental map of how things work.
Like a really surprising event.
Exactly. Or maybe information that fundamentally challenges a core belief. This reflex kicks in. It basically disrupts our normal goal-directed behavior. Hits the pause button.
Why does it do that?
Because the emergence of the unknown signals an error. It tells our brain, hold on, your current understanding of reality might be wrong or incomplete.
Okay.
And what's fascinating is that this moment provokes both fear and hope simultaneously.
Fear and hope. How?
Fear of the unfamiliar, the potential danger in the unknown, but also hope for new understanding, for adaptation, for growth. It creates this really intense internal conflict.
I can see that, like being drawn to something new, but also terrified of it.
Exactly. And interestingly, our right brain hemisphere seems particularly wired for these initial sort of holistic, intuitive responses to threat or novelty, while the left brain prefers the familiar territory, logic, step-by-step processing.
So there's a bit of a tug of war internally.
Definitely. And if that perceived threat still lurks after our initial reaction, if we can't easily dismiss it or fit it into our existing boxes, it means our current coping mechanisms, our adaptations, are insufficient. We're struggling to integrate the unexpected.
That makes so much sense. That feeling of unease when things just don't add up. And this ability to, imagine danger. It's very human, isn't it? It's not just about what's right in front of us.
Yes, that's a critical difference between us and most animals. Animals are primarily focused on immediate physical threats.
Right, the predator in the bushes.
We humans have this unique, profound, and sometimes, frankly, burdensome ability to abstractly imagine future negative events, including our own deaths and the deaths of people we love.
Wow. Yeah, that's heavy.
It is. And as one source puts it, this introduces an intractable anomaly, a fundamental flaw in our feeling of control over life. It links our awareness of mortal fragility to basically every risk we encounter, big or small.
So even a small risk feels bigger because it taps into that deeper existential fear.
It can. Absolutely. And this capacity fuels a really profound apprehension of the unknown. It manifests as this constant, often subtle struggle against entropy, against disorder, against the inherent chaos that our consciousness is always trying to battle and make sense of.
So the discomfort of uncertainty, just not knowing what will happen, can feel overwhelming.
So overwhelming that we often cling desperately to what's familiar. Even if that familiar place is deeply unsatisfying or even actively miserable, we prefer the known pain to the unknown possibility.
So essentially, we self-limit as a defense mechanism. We choose the predictable misery over the terrifying potential of something new, something unknown.
That's a core part of the glitch, yes. Humans, unlike animals running purely on instinct, have had to, as one source eloquently puts it, invent and create out of themselves the limitations of perception and the equanimity to live on this planet.
We create our own boundaries to cope with the world.
Exactly. This act of self-limitation, while it might be protective in some primal sense, helping us filter an overwhelming reality, can also become that vital lie we talked about. It becomes a core part of our character, our perceived identity.
And that limits us.
Hugely. The fear of one's own greatness or the evasion of one's destiny, as some thinkers frame it.
Yeah.
These are significant, often totally unconscious blocks to actualizing our potential. It really illustrates a fundamental fear of moving beyond that known, albeit miserable territory.
Yeah.
We build these internal walls, you see, not always realizing they're imprisoning us just as much as they're protecting us.
Wow. That really flows directly into the second psychological root cause of this human glitch we wanted to discuss. These pervasive feelings of unworthiness. This seems like it goes incredibly deep, like it starts really, really early in life.
It does. It often stems from some of our earliest developmental experiences. There's a major psychological framework for understanding this, sometimes called the Edible Project.
Okay, but maybe not in the way most people think of that term.
Exactly. Let's set aside the traditional, often quite controversial sexual interpretation for a moment. Think of it instead as the fundamental, universal struggle of a young child to gain control over their own developing powers and to truly separate, psychologically, from their primary caregiver, often the mother figure initially.
Separating and becoming their own person.
Right. And that caregiver figure is experienced in this really paradoxical way. On one hand, they're the pure source of pleasure and satisfaction, the all-providing, nurturing presence that meets every need.
The safe harbor.
But simultaneously, they can also be perceived as a kind of witch of the dark, tied to the child's own feelings of physical vulnerability, dependency, and sometimes the perceived neurotic and helpless character the child feels within themselves or projects onto the caregiver.
So love and safety, but also the source of limitations or frustrations.
Exactly. And this early experience of, let's call it dethroning, this ejection from paradise, as one source dramatically puts it, when the child realizes they aren't omnipotent, that the world doesn't revolve solely around them.
That must be a shock.
It's a profound realization, and it can create this deep-seated sense of having an impossible project, the project of becoming a separate, powerful self in a complex world. This often fosters fundamental feelings of inadequacy, a kind of primal, low self-esteem that can echo throughout a person's life.
So it's about that initial blow to our sense of control, realizing our limits.
That's a big part of it. And layer on top of that how our very sense of self and our internal moral compass, our rule book for life, are largely grafted into us from outside, from all these interactions with caregivers, peers, society.
We learn the rules of the game.
We do. And this process, while necessary for socialization, often leads to an underlying feeling of being perpetually guilty and beholden to others, like we're a lesser creation, somehow indebted for our very existence.
Wow, indebted for existing. That's intense.
It can feel that way unconsciously. This external imposition of rules, expectations, and judgments can contribute powerfully to a profound sense of unworthiness, or this nagging belief that our true gifts, our real selves, are somehow unrealized, insufficient, or just not good enough.
And this links directly back to the idea of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a perfect connection. That feeling of unworthiness is the bedrock of the fixed mindset. People stuck here tend to tie their entire sense of worth to perceived innate talent rather than effort or learning.
So I'm either smart or I'm not.
Exactly. So when they face challenges, make mistakes, or just don't perform perfectly right away, they tend to immediately malign their abilities. You hear that internal script, I'm so stupid, I just can't do this, I'll never get this.
Or they blame someone else.
Or they blame others, absolutely. The instructions were unclear, my teammate dropped the ball. Anything but seeing it as an opportunity to learn and grow. This deep fear of not being flawless, of not being smart right away, becomes a massive driver of self-sabotage.
Why? Because any struggle confirms the fear.
Precisely. Any imperfection, any need for effort, immediately triggers that underlying, often unconscious fear of unworthiness. It's like an internal alarm screaming, "See? Told you, you're not good enough." It makes taking risks or trying new things feel terrifying.
So your whole self-worth feels like it's on the line with every single attempt. That's
Yeah.
exhausting. And what about neurosis? How does that fit in here? It's a word we hear, but maybe don't always fully grasp in this context.
It's a really insightful connection in some of the source material. Neurosis, in this framework, can be viewed as a kind of striving for an individual religion, a self-achieved immortality.
Whoa, okay. Unpack that a bit.
It's this profound idea, this unreal self-inflation. It's essentially a desperate, often completely unconscious attempt to deny our fundamental creatureliness, our inherent human limitations, our vulnerabilities, our ultimate mortality.
Trying to become perfect, godlike.
In a sense, yes. Trying to achieve a state of self-sufficiency and perfection that's simply not possible for humans.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. Ordinary human relationships simply cannot bear the immense burden of trying to make us feel like gods.
You can't get that absolute fulfillment from another person.
You can't. So when we unconsciously seek that absolute validation, that escape from our limitations, from another person, a partner, a child, even a mentor, it inevitably leads to a sense of double failure.
Double failure.
First, the relationship itself crumbles under the impossible weight of that demand. It just can't deliver. And second, that failure reinforces the original feeling of inferiority, that nagging sense that one's life hasn't succeeded because it hasn't achieved this impossible, inflated, neurotic standard of perfection.
Wow. It's a tragic cycle. Aiming for the impossible, then crashing down and blaming yourself for the other person.
Exactly. A painful, self-sabotaging loop driven by that hidden feeling of unworthiness.
Okay, moving to the third big psychological driver of the human glitch. This one sounds incredibly counterintuitive, the comfort of familiar misery.
Why on earth would anyone find comfort in misery? It sounds completely illogical.
It does, doesn't it? But it's a profound paradox, and it's deeply rooted in how our brains crave predictability, even if that predictability involves pain.
Predictability over happiness?
Sometimes, yes. Take chronic worry as an example. Logically, it seems totally unproductive, even debilitating.
Right. Just churning things over and over.
But psychologically, it often offers a partial payoff. It allows the worrier to mentally rehearse what those dangers are. You play that movie in your head of all the bad things that might happen.
Okay, so it feels like you're doing something, preparing.
It can feel that way. But often, instead of actually finding solutions or taking preventative action, the worrier just ruminates on the danger itself, immersing themselves in a low-key way in the dread associated with it while staying in the same rut of thought.
Just looping the dread. Exactly. And this pattern perfectly illustrates how the known discomfort, however miserable or anxiety-inducing it is, can feel strangely comforting, or at least more manageable, than the terrifying uncertainty of truly changing course, of stepping into the unknown.
So at least with the familiar misery, you know what to expect. Your brain doesn't have to work so hard.
That's a huge part of it. Our brains are fundamentally efficiency machines. They love shortcuts. And familiar misery, familiar patterns are known quantities. They don't require the energy expenditure of navigating novelty or uncertainty.
So it's less about actually liking the misery and more about the predictability and the lower mental effort involved, like habits themselves.
Precisely. Habits are like those entrance ramps to a highway, as one author puts it. Once you're on that ramp, it just pulls you down a predictable path. It's almost always easier to continue what you are already doing than to start doing something different.
Even if where you're going isn't great.
Even then. This phenomenon explains why you might say, sit through a bad movie for 2 hours, even though you stopped enjoying it after 20 minutes.
Or keep scrolling on your phone, even though you know you should be doing something else.
Or keep snacking even when you're already full and starting to feel uncomfortable. These automatic choices, even when they're clearly detrimental to our long-term goals or well-being, provide that familiar, low-effort route. It's the path of least resistance for the brain, even if it leads somewhere we don't actually want to be.
So this isn't just about individual choices like snacking. This comfort of familiar misery must show up big time in our relationships too. Like that dynamic you hear about, the anxious avoidant trap.
Oh, that's a perfect and often incredibly painful example. Relationships can absolutely become these anxious avoidant traps. You have conflicting intimacy needs, creating these highly predictable yet deeply unhappy cycles.
Like one person chases, the other withdraws.
Exactly. The anxious partner craves closeness, reassurance, connection. The avoidant partner feels suffocated by too much closeness and pulls away, needing space. This triggers the anxious partner's fear of abandonment, so they pursue harder.
Which makes the avoidant partner withdraw even more.
And the cycle repeats, often escalating over time. Like a physical trap, you often fall into it with no awareness, drawn by maybe an initial intense chemistry. And once you're caught, it's incredibly hard to break free.
Why? Because the pattern itself becomes familiar.
Yes, the pattern becomes deeply ingrained. It feels normal, even though it's making both people miserable. And what's particularly poignant, as one source highlights, is that even the anxious partner, after maybe years of this emotional roller coaster, the constant pursuit and rejection, they might eventually start to deactivate her attachment system.
They give up.
They essentially settle. They become more detached, emotionally quieter. The intense anxiety might lessen, but it's replaced by a kind of resignation, a low-level dissatisfaction. They're still miserable, but it's a familiar, quieter misery.
So the deactivation offers a temporary escape from the acute pain.
Right, from the constant chase and the intense anxiety spikes. But ultimately, it means remaining stuck in that cycle of familiar emotional patterns, rather than pursuing genuine healing, finding ways to communicate better, or maybe even making the difficult choice to leave the relationship for something healthier.
Wow. Choosing the misery, over the terrifying unknown of true intimacy, or being alone, or trying again.
It's a powerful pull. And that choice can also manifest on a broader social level in how we relate to groups and our sense of identity.
How so?
Well, in more sort of primitive psychological terms, identification with the group is a simple and easy path. Think about it. When you're caught up in a collective, a passionate sports fan base, a political movement, even just a strong national identity.
You feel part of something bigger.
Exactly. It provides kind of mass intoxication that temporarily elevates your sense of self. You might feel like a whole nation, which is much better than being just plain Mr. X, as one writer described it. It gives you this heightened sense of belonging, power, maybe even significance.
A temporary boost.
But that's the key. This change does not last. When the crowd disperses, when you're alone again, the individual often returns to feeling like just plain Mr. X.
The feeling doesn't stick.
No. This kind of regressive identification with these collective states offers a fleeting, heightened sense of life, but it actively prevents genuine, lasting self-development. It prefers the transient comfort of a borrowed collective identity over the challenging, often lonely work of individual growth, figuring out who you are separate from the group. It's another form of familiar, temporary relief that ultimately sacrifices true progress.
So, okay, we've really unpacked the deep psychological roots of this human glitch, how fear, unworthiness, and that weird comfort of familiar misery drive these self-sabotaging patterns. Now, let's zoom in a bit. Let's look at how this actually plays out in our moment-to-moment thinking. Those automatic mental shortcuts, those cognitive distortions that actually fuel the self-sabotage.
Like these thinking glitches.
And it's important to say these aren't necessarily signs of being, irrational, right? Not in the way we usually think of it.
Not exactly. They're more like fast-acting, streamlined, simplified ways of looking at things that often spring directly from our emotional mind, bypassing the slower, rational checks and balances.
They happen so fast.
So fast and so automatically that, as one source puts it, when the dust settles, we find ourselves thinking, what did I do that for? You acted on the distortion before you even realized it.
Okay, so this next section is all about unpacking some specific, really common cognitive distortions that act as the internal fuel for the glitch. Where should we start?
Let's start with the big one, black and white thinking. That's also often called all or nothing thinking.
Okay, black and white. Sounds pretty self-explanatory.
At its core, yeah. It involves viewing situations, people, or very often yourself, in absolute extreme terms. Things are either perfect or they're a total failure, good or bad, success or disaster. There's absolutely no middle ground, no shades of gray.
So if something isn't flawless, it's immediately just garbage. No room for pretty good or making progress.
Exactly. This incredibly rigid mindset fundamentally prevents you from acknowledging incremental progress. It stops you from accepting imperfections in yourself or others. It blinds you to nuance.
And how does that fuel self-sabotage?
Because it makes anything less than absolute perfection feel like complete and utter failure. Which, let's face it, is most things in life. So the reaction is often to just give up entirely or withdraw or lash out.
Can you give an example, maybe in relationships?
Absolutely. Anxious individuals, for instance, when they feel distressed or are in conflict, frequently get flooded with negative emotions and think in extremes. They start perceiving the relationship as incredibly fragile and unstable that can collapse at any moment.
Wow. So a small argument isn't just a small argument.
No. In their mind, fueled by black and white thinking, a minor disagreement isn't a solvable problem. It's a terrifying sign that the entire relationship is doomed. They instantly lead to the worst-case scenario. It's either perfect harmony or total collapse, nothing in between.
Yikes. I can see how that would lead to a lot of unnecessary drama. Or maybe the opposite, just shutting down completely to avoid any hint of perceived failure.
Exactly. And think about personal achievement or learning. This distortion is practically the definition of the fixed mindset.
Right. Connect those dots.
Individuals with a fixed mindset often believe they're only smart or competent under very specific, perfect conditions. When I don't make any mistakes, or when I finish something fast and it's perfect, or maybe when something is easy for me, but other people struggle with it.
Setting the bar impossibly high.
Totally unrealistic. So any error, any struggle, any moment of not being instantly brilliant is immediately interpreted as conclusive proof of their fundamental inadequacy. What's the result?
They quit. Or blame someone else.
Often, yes. Abandoning the task entirely or immediately shifting blame rather than seeing the struggle as a normal, essential part of the learning process.
So this isn't just about judging tasks or situations. It bleeds into how you judge yourself. If I'm not perfect, then I am fundamentally flawed as a person.
Precisely. That's the insidious part. This distortion leads to profound self-sabotage because it reinforces the toxic belief. If their life is flawed, then they're flawed. This creates immense internal pressure to maintain an illusion of flawlessness, which, ironically, prevents you from embracing the very challenges and inevitable struggles that are absolutely necessary for genuine growth and development.
So you end up stuck, stagnating, maybe procrastinating, avoiding anything where you might not be perfect immediately.
Exactly. You withdraw from potential learning experiences simply because the risk of imperfection feels far too threatening to your core identity, which is built on this fragile foundation of needing to be flawless.
Okay, that's a big one. What's the next distortion on our list?
The next one is emotional reasoning. This one sounds simple on the surface, but its impact is just huge.
Emotional reasoning. My feelings dictate reality.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It's surprisingly powerful because it's so automatic and often feels completely true in the moment. Emotional reasoning is when you genuinely believe something is true simply because you feel it to be true, regardless of any objective evidence or logical arguments to the contrary.
So, I feel anxious, therefore the situation is dangerous. Or, I feel stupid, therefore I am stupid.
Exactly. Your emotional mind generates this incredibly strong sense of certainty that can just steamroll your rational thoughts. And this leads you to act in ways that actually confirm those initial feelings rather than engaging with the actual reality of the situation.
Wow, so my feelings aren't just influencing my thoughts, they're literally becoming the evidence for my reality. Can you give us a really clear example of how that messes things up?
Definitely. Let's go back to relationships.
Uh-huh.
Anxious partners, when they get flooded with negative emotions like intense fear or insecurity,
Yeah.
they might express their needs or fears in a way that comes across as explosive, accusatory, critical, or threatening. They're acting out the intensity of their feeling. But that kind of intense reaction often causes their partner to withdraw or shut down, understandably, which then, ironically, serves to confirm the anxious partner's initial feeling that the relationship is threatened or that they're being rejected or that their partner doesn't care.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, driven by the feeling, not the facts.
Exactly. Remember Lauren, the woman with the anxious attachment style we read about?
Vaguely remind me.
She was dating Ethan, and he had this habit of saying really abrupt goodbyes after their dates. Didn't linger.
Okay.
Lauren immediately thought that perhaps Ethan simply wasn't attracted to her. That was her feeling. Rejection. Now, despite the fact that he kept asking her out, showing interest in other ways,
The feeling took over?
her feeling of being unwanted led her to assume a lack of attraction was the definitive truth. She almost sabotaged the whole thing because she was operating entirely on her emotional reasoning without actually checking the facts or considering other possibilities for his quick exits. Her feeling became her reality.
Oof. That's incredibly relatable. I bet a lot of listeners recognize that dynamic, either in themselves or someone they know. And how does this play out in just, everyday decisions or dealing with problems?
Chronic worriers are a prime example here. they get caught in that cycle of ruminating on the danger itself, immersing themselves in a low-key way in the dread associated with it while staying in the same rut of thought.
Right, we talked about that comfort and misery.
And the feeling of dread is what keeps the worry cycle going. It prevents them from stepping back, seeing new solutions, or considering alternative perspectives. They are literally trapped by their own emotional state.
Nice.
It feels so real, so urgent, that counter-evidence just bounces off.
It's like the emotion hijacks the thinking process.
It really does. Our sources even point out that the psyche itself can sometimes behave so autocratically that it denies tangible reality or makes statements that fly in the face of it. That highlights just how powerful this internal mechanism is, where our subjective emotional experience can completely override objective facts. It makes breaking free really difficult without conscious effort.
Okay, yeah, that's a tough one because those feelings feel so incredibly valid and true when we're in them. What's the third distortion fueling the glitch?
The third one we'll cover is catastrophizing. Sometimes it's vividly called fortune-telling, specifically telling a negative fortune.
Catastrophizing. Okay. Sounds like making mountains out of molehills.
Exactly, but often on a grand scale. This distortion involves predicting and then exclusively focusing on the absolute worst possible outcome of a situation, often with very little or sometimes zero objective evidence to support such a dire prediction.
Always assuming the sky is falling, even if it's just like a single dark cloud.
Precisely that. And it's fueled by two things working together. Our brain's innate alarm system, the amygdala, which is wired to anticipate danger.
Better safe than, biologically speaking.
Right. And also our unique human capacity to vividly imagine future negative events, including, at the deepest level, our own mortality. We can picture disasters in high definition.
Okay, so how does this show up? Give us an example.
Back to relationships again. There's such fertile ground for these distortions. Anxious individuals frequently perceive the relationship as something fragile and unstable that can collapse at any moment.
Always waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Constantly. So they might interpret a slightly delayed text message not as, oh, they're busy, but as, this is it, they're pulling away, it's over. A minor disagreement isn't just a bump in the road, it's the beginning of the end.
And that constant anticipation must affect behavior.
Hugely. It leads to these self-protective, but ultimately self-sabotaging behaviors, like maybe withdrawing preemptively to avoid the expected hurt, or resorting to protest behavior, making excessive demands, starting arguments, issuing ultimatums, trying to force reassurance, even when no real threat actually exists.
And those behaviors often push people away.
Bringing about the very catastrophe they were trying to prevent. Their actions, driven by the fear of the imagined disaster, ironically create the disaster.
Wow. And does this kind of thinking, this tendency to anticipate the worst, have roots in early life too?
It certainly can. Thinking back to that developmental idea of the tragic dethroning of the child.
Realizing they aren't the center of the universe.
Right. When a child realizes the limits of their own power, that they can't control everything, that the world won't always bend to their will, that experience can feel like a mini catastrophe, that ejection from paradise, that dawning awareness of their vulnerability, their creatureliness.
It can leave a mark.
It can establish a deep-seated pattern of anticipating extreme negative outcomes in future challenges. It makes you shy away from risks later in life because every new venture, every potential failure feels like it could be a devastating repeat of that initial profound disappointment or loss of control.
It sounds like our brains are literally physically preparing for these imagined disasters, treating them as if they're already happening.
They absolutely are. The physiology backs this up. The amygdala's role in mobilizing the body for fight or flight, flooding us with stress hormones, and even shuffling our cortical memory systems to retrieve any knowledge relevant to the emergency at hand.
It's all systems go for a disaster that exists only in our heads.
Exactly. The brain physically prepares for a catastrophe that hasn't actually happened and might never happen. And this constant preparatory state, if it becomes chronic, is incredibly draining, physically and mentally. And in a very real sense, it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
How so?
Because individuals stuck in a constant state of catastrophizing become neurologically primed to see only the negative potential in any situation. They filter out positive possibilities, they overemphasize risks, they interpret ambiguous information negatively, thus constantly reinforcing the catastrophizing loop. Their perceived reality becomes shaped entirely by their worst fears.
Okay, that's a really vicious cycle. One more distortion for us to cover today.
The final one is confirmation bias, which often goes hand in hand with selection bias.
Confirmation bias. Seeking out information that confirms what we already believe, this one feels particularly insidious.
It is arguably one of the most powerful and sneaky glitches in our thinking. Confirmation bias, along with its cousin selection bias, involves actively seeking out, interpreting, and recalling information in a way that specifically confirms our existing beliefs, assumptions, or a default story we already have firmly rooted in our mind.
It's not about finding the truth, it's about being right.
Precisely. It's about maintaining our existing mental model. And this inevitably leads to repeated mistakes because you stop looking for disconfirming evidence. You just ignore or dismiss anything that doesn't fit. It also fosters quick certainty, jumping to conclusions that fit our bias, and a strong defensiveness when challenged. We simply don't let in anything that contradicts what we already know to be true about ourselves, others, or the world.
And the sources had a really stark, almost unbelievable example of this relating to group dynamics, even cults. That really hammered home how powerful this can be.
Yes, that was a striking and frankly unsettling example. It involved members of a group, essentially a cult, who were absolutely convinced a catastrophic event, specifically a massive flood, was imminent. Their commitment to this belief, this dogma, was total.
Okay.
Then the predicted day came and went. No flood. Clear, undeniable, objective evidence that their core belief was wrong.
So they abandoned the belief.
Not at all. Instead, their commitment to their dogma grew as each pressure was resisted. They didn't question their beliefs. That would have been too psychologically shattering. Instead, they immediately became avid seekers for publicity. Not to admit they were wrong, but to spread an explanation for why the flood didn't happen, like their faith had saved the world.
Wow. They doubled down.
Massively. They needed to retroactively fit the contradictory evidence into their existing framework, reinforcing their initial beliefs rather than abandoning it. It demonstrates this incredibly powerful, almost desperate human drive to confirm our existing worldview, even when faced with overwhelming contradictory facts.
That's truly mind-boggling. So, if people can exhibit that level of confirmation bias in such an extreme situation, what does it mean for our everyday lives, our relationships, our personal struggles?
The implications are huge and everywhere. Think about marital conflict. It's so easy for partners to fall into innocent victim or righteous indignation thoughts.
It's all their fault.
Exactly, which leads them to selectively perceive or recall their partner's actions in a way that perfectly confirms their own victim status or righteousness. They remember every single slight committed against them, but conveniently forget their own contributions to the conflict.
Filters are definitely on.
Filters are fully engaged. Similarly, avoidant individuals in relationships remember them. They often actively focus on their partner's negative qualities and behaviors to keep their partner at bay. They highlight the flaws, the annoyances, because this selectively chosen negative information serves to confirm their underlying belief that deep intimacy is undesirable, maybe suffocating, or just fundamentally flawed and not worth the effort. They filter out the good things, the positive moments, to maintain their comfortable, albeit often lonely and unfulfilling narrative of detachment.
And this must be exactly how that vital lie we talked about way back at the beginning, that my life is perfect, or my problems are all external, or I'm just unlucky, gets perpetuated, right? The bias just keeps feeding the lie.
Precisely. Confirmation bias allows individuals to cling tightly to that vital lie. It lets them maintain the fiction that their problems are solely due to external factors, bad luck, difficult people, unfair circumstances, rather than acknowledging their own internal patterns of thinking, feeling, or behaving. It actively prevents genuine self-reflection, which is necessary for change, and reinforces those self-sabotaging behaviors by consistently filtering out any information that would challenge the glitch or their carefully constructed, often quite false sense of self. It's like living permanently inside a self-designed echo chamber.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about what the human glitch is, the deep psychology behind it, fear, unworthiness, familiar misery, and now these cognitive distortions that fuel it moment by moment. Black and white thinking, emotional reasoning, catastrophizing, confirmation bias.
Yeah, the big ones.
It's clear these patterns are incredibly common, deeply ingrained, and, well, pretty powerful. So now for the really crucial part. How do we actually begin to fix it? What are the practical takeaways? How do we start debugging this glitch?
This is the hopeful part, and it's vital. While these cognitive distortions are powerful and they feel incredibly automatic, The key message from all the research is that they are not fixed.
We can change them?
Absolutely. Just as our brains can be conditioned into fear or unhelpful patterns, they can be relearned. We can train them to respond in healthier, more adaptive ways. As our sources strongly emphasize, emotional learning is lifelong.
So it's never too late.
Never too late. We are capable of growth and change at any age. Even those deeply ingrained habits of the heart learned in childhood can be reshaped. It takes work, conscious effort, but it's possible. The overarching goal here is to consciously gain control over our attention, where we focus our minds and then intentionally choose new behaviors, new responses.
Okay. How do we do that? Is there a simple framework?
There is. We can simplify the process into a really powerful, accessible 3-step technique, often used in cognitive behavioral therapy. Let's call it the 3 C's. Catch it, check it, and change it.
Catch it, check it, change it. Okay, I like that. So the first step, catch it, must be all about awareness, right? Making the unconscious conscious, like you said.
Exactly.
But how do you actually do that? It sounds really hard to catch something that, by definition, usually operates outside your conscious awareness. Where do you even start?
It's definitely a practice, not something you master overnight. The crucial first step is becoming an observer of your own mind. Developing the capacity to notice your habitual, often non-conscious thoughts, feelings, and behaviors as they happen.
Like an internal detective.
Kind of, yeah. Remember Jung's powerful insight. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Catching it is about interrupting that automatic fate. It involves pausing, taking a mental step back, even for just a second, and simply observing the glitches, the distorted thoughts, the unhelpful impulses as they arise. Like noticing clues without immediately judging them.
Okay, observing. But how? Any practical tools?
Yes. A really practical way to start is by using something like a habit scorecard, as James Clear suggests. For just a few days, literally write down your current habits as you notice yourself doing them. Brushing teeth, making coffee, checking your phone, complaining. Note them down and maybe mark if they feel positive, negative, or neutral for your goals. You might be genuinely surprised by how many unconscious actions fill your day.
Just bringing them into awareness.
Exactly. Or if your glitches tend to show up more in relationships, maybe try creating a relationship inventory. You could journal specifically about how your attachment style affects your day-to-day thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in romantic interactions. What triggers you? What assumptions do you make? This journaling process helps you externalize these internal patterns, make them concrete, visible. It gives you something tangible to look at and work with instead of just letting them run the show unseen.
It's like shining a flashlight into those dark corners of our minds, bringing those hidden patterns into the daylight. And that includes acknowledging even the parts we don't like the fixed mindset, right? We probably all have bits of that.
Absolutely critical. It's vital to acknowledge that pretty much everyone possesses a mixture of fixed and growth mindsets. It's rarely a pure either-or situation. The journey towards cultivating a stronger growth mindset actually begins by embracing your fixed mindset. Not in the sense of approving it, but consciously identifying its presence within you.
Not judging, just noticing.
Exactly. When you hear that inner voice pipe up with, oh, I can't possibly do this, or I'm just not smart enough for this, or I fail at this, it proves I'm a total loser. Recognize that voice. Label it. Ah, there's my fixed mindset talking. This isn't about shaming yourself. It's about honest recognition of the patterns that are already there. You simply can't fix what you refuse to acknowledge.
Right. You need to see the glitch to debug it.
And crucially, alongside this noticing, cultivate regular reflection. This doesn't have to be hours of meditation. It could be just 5 minutes at the end of the day. This reflection is like viewing yourself in the mirror from a conversational distance, as one source puts it. It allows you to see the important changes, the bigger patterns over time, without getting bogged down obsessing over every single tiny peak and valley of your mood or performance.
Getting perspective.
Yes. This contrasts sharply with either being blind to your actions because you never reflect, or feeling impotent because you reflect endlessly but never act. You need both the seeing and the understanding that leads to action. It's about gaining that wider perspective, seeing the whole mountain range of your progress, not just the bump you hit today.
Okay, so that's catch it. Become aware, observe without judgment, reflect. Once we've caught the glitch, we've identified the distorted thought, the unhelpful pattern, the next step is check it. This sounds like where the rational mind finally gets its chance to step in and challenge those super fast, often inaccurate, emotional reactions or automatic thoughts.
That's exactly what it is.
Right.
And it requires conscious, deliberate effort, especially at first.
Yeah.
When you catch yourself having a distorted thought, say, you notice you're engaging in blatant confirmation bias, only looking for evidence that proves your partner is selfish.
Yeah.
You need to immediately challenge it. For that selection bias, where you're filtering reality, you need to explicitly ask yourself some tough questions. Okay, hold on. If I were actually wrong about this, what evidence might I be missing? What positives am I ignoring? And maybe even who disagrees with me on this? What's their perspective? Why might they see it differently?
Actively seeking the counter evidence.
Yes. It forces your brain to deliberately break out of that comfortable mental echo chamber you've inadvertently built. You have to actively look for the data points you've been filtering out.
So it's really a form of critical self-inquiry, a pause for examination before we fully commit to a belief or an action based on that glitchy thought.
Precisely. And this applies not just to thoughts, but to bigger goals or actions too. Before you pour significant time and energy into a new project, a major life change, or even just reacting strongly to something, engage in some deep self-inquiry. Ask yourself questions like, okay, is this something I really want to do? Or am I feeling pressured or acting out of fear or obligation?
What else?
Is this something I genuinely enjoy doing? Or am I likely to enjoy the process in the foreseeable future? Is the price, the effort, the stress, the impact on others genuinely worth the potential outcome? And maybe most importantly, will I be able to live with myself if I accomplish this? Or if I don't?
Those are deep questions.
They are. They come from sources looking at effective ethical leadership, but they apply perfectly here. They help you check if your actions truly align with your deeper values and sense of purpose, rather than just being automatic reactions driven by a glitch, insecurity, or external validation seeking. They force that crucial pause to evaluate the why before you get lost in the what.
Okay. And thinking about relationships again, where emotions often run really high and a quick, unchecked reaction can do a lot of damage. How do you effectively check a thought or an impulse in the heat of the moment?
That's a huge challenge, but so important. In conflicts, especially close relationships, the key is often to resist that powerful urge to immediately short-circuit the discussion by offering a practical solution too early on.
Don't just jump to fixing it.
Right. That's often our rational brain trying to regain control or stop the uncomfortable feelings. But often, the emotional brain of the other person, and maybe yours too, needs something entirely different first. The check here involves checking your impulse to fix, and instead focusing first on understanding and validating your partner's feelings.
Even if you don't agree with them.
Even if you completely disagree with their perspective or think their emotional reaction is way over the top, try to understand why they feel that way. Reflect it back. Okay, so it sounds like you're feeling really frustrated because their fundamental need to feel heard, seen, and respected is often far more critical in that moment than finding an immediate logical answer or proving them wrong. Checking your own defensiveness and prioritizing empathy can be a massive game changer for breaking negative cycles and preventing self-sabotage in relationships.
Okay, catch it, check it, and finally, we get to change it. This feels like the action step. This is where we actively reframe the distorted thinking and, crucially, respond differently, choosing new behaviors to replace the old, glitchy ones. How do we start actually implementing new, healthier patterns and making them stick?
This is definitely where the rubber meets the road, shifting from understanding to tangible action. And a really powerful approach here, emphasized in habit formation research, is to shift your focus. Don't just focus on what you want to achieve, the outcome. Focus on who you wish to become, the identity.
Identity-based habits. We've talked about that before.
Exactly. Because your identity, your sense of self, emerges directly out of your habits, out of your repeated actions. As James Clear puts it so powerfully, every action is a vote for the type of person you wish to become.
Every action is a vote. I like that.
So each small positive action you take, maybe choosing the workout even when you don't feel like it, maybe speaking up calmly instead of reacting defensively, maybe saving that small amount of money even if it feels tiny and insignificant in the moment. It's a vote cast for the identity you want to embody. E.g., I am a healthy person, I am a calm communicator, I am financially responsible. Over time, these votes accumulate and literally reshape your self-belief and your self-image. It's a continuous process of editing your internal narrative and expanding your identity, one small action at a time.
So it's not just about doing things differently, but fundamentally rewiring who you believe yourself to be. And our brains are actually wired for this kind of change, right? This isn't just positive thinking mumbo jumbo.
Not at all. This is grounded in neuroscience. Understanding the concept of neuroplasticity, sometimes called brainology in educational contexts, is incredibly empowering here. It's the solid scientific understanding that your brain is not fixed, like a piece of hardware that never changes.
It can rewire itself.
Precisely. Knowing that your neurons could grow through effort, that your brain physically changes its structure and connections in response to learning, practice, and experience, that knowledge fundamentally empowers you to persist through challenges. It allows you to reframe difficulty. Instead of seeing a struggle as a sign of inadequacy or confirmation of a fixed flaw, see, I know I couldn't do this.
So,
You can see it as an opportunity for actual brain development, for strengthening neural pathways, for genuine learning.
so struggle becomes a sign of growth, not failure.
Exactly. That reframing is huge. Your brain literally reshapes itself based on what you repeatedly practice, where you consistently focus your attention and the choices you make. You are actively sculpting your brain through your actions.
That's a massive shift in perspective. Okay, so knowing change is possible. What about the practical day-to-day strategies? How do we build these new positive habits so they actually stick without relying solely on finite willpower?
Great question. Willpower is unreliable. We need systems. There are several really powerful evidence-based strategies. First, make it obvious. You need clear cues to trigger the new habit.
Oh.
Use implementation intentions. Be super specific about what you'll do, when, and where. Not just I'll exercise more, but I will do 20 push-ups at 7 a.m. in my living room. Specificity is key. You can also use habit stacking. Link your new desired habit to an existing one. After I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute. The old habit becomes the cue for the new one.
Piggybacking habits.
Exactly. And crucially, design your environment. Make the cues for your good habits highly visible and obvious, and make the cues for your bad habits invisible or difficult to access. Want to read more? Leave a book on your pillow. Want to eat less junk food? Don't keep it in the house or at least hide it away somewhere inconvenient. Make the right choice the easy, obvious choice.
Okay, make it obvious. What else? What if the new habit just feels too big and daunting to even start? Like, I want to write a novel or I want to run a marathon.
Then you absolutely have to make it easy, especially at the beginning. Apply the incredibly effective 2-minute rule. When you start a new habit, scale it down so that the initial version takes less than 2 minutes to do.
2 minutes. That's it.
That's it. The goal isn't massive achievement on day one. The goal is to simply show up and get started, to build the initial momentum, to create that entrance ramp for the good behavior. So instead of read for an hour every night, your habit becomes read 1 page. Instead of run 3 miles, it's put on my running shoes and step outside.
Ah, so it lowers the barrier to starting.
Dramatically. It makes it almost impossible not to do the 2-minute version, even when your motivation is 0. And the magic is, once you've started, once you've put on the running shoes, it's often much easier to just keep going for a bit longer. But the core habit is just starting. Consistency over intensity, especially at first.
Make it obvious. Make it easy. Can we automate any of this to take willpower even further out of the equation?
Yes, absolutely. Automate wherever possible. This involves making one-time choices that lock in future good behavior.
Like what?
Things like enrolling in an automatic savings plan that pulls money from your paycheck before you even see it, setting up automatic bill payments, pre-chopping vegetables for the week on Sunday, installing website blockers on your computer during work hours, unsubscribing from tempting marketing emails. These are decisions you make once that automate positive habits or remove temptations going forward, delivering increasing returns over time with minimal ongoing effort. Using technology and clever systems to automate your desired behaviors is one of the most reliable ways to guarantee consistency without draining your willpower reserves every single day. You leverage your initial good intention to remove future friction.
So this whole change it step is really about actively reframing our thoughts, our identity, and strategically restructuring our behavior and environment, taking conscious control back from the glitch.
That's precisely right. It's also about learning to actively reinterpret adversity. Instead of seeing setbacks, mistakes, or even traumatic events purely as evidence of personal flaws or failures, consciously work to reframe them as possible challenges. This is active mental work. By deliberately framing problems this way, you shift your mindset towards finding solutions, developing appropriate skills, and actively trying to draw order from disorder. You transform adversity from something that confirms your inadequacy into fuel for meaning, learning, and growth. It's about actively making sense of the chaos in a productive way.
That's a powerful reframe. But what about those really deep, painful emotional patterns, maybe stemming from past trauma? How does change it apply there when the reactions feel so raw, so automatic, so deeply wired?
That requires a more specialized approach, often within a safe therapeutic relationship. For those profound, often unconscious emotional patterns, the process is often called emotional relearning. This typically involves carefully revisiting the traumatic memories or associated feelings, but doing so within a context of present-day safety and security.
Reliving it safely.
In a controlled way, yes,
Mm-hmm.
with the support of a therapist, for example. The goal is to help your emotional brain, the amygdala, and related structures learn that survival and security can actually coexist with these painful memories. It's about creating new, healthier neural associations. You're essentially rewiring those old automatic fear responses that might be driving current self-sabotaging behaviors like avoidance or hypervigilance. It's not about erasing the past, but about fundamentally changing its power over your present reactions and future choices.
Okay. So, catching the glitch, checking it with rational thought and empathy, and then actively changing our identity, habits, environment, and even deep emotional wiring. It sounds like this all culminates in something maybe bigger than just fixing individual bad habits, like finding a deeper sense of purpose.
It absolutely does, profoundly so. A critical part of sustainably changing it involves identifying and cultivating a unifying purpose. This isn't just a goal, it's more like an overarching mission, a set of values, or a guiding principle that genuinely attracts your psychic energy and helps define the challenges you choose to face in life.
A North Star.
Exactly. This larger purpose provides deep intrinsic meaning. It transforms mundane daily activities from chores into steps along a meaningful path. It can turn work, learning, even overcoming obstacles into what psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi called a flow activity. Those moments of optimal experience where you're fully absorbed, energized, and lose track of time. This sense of purpose prevents even a highly organized, well-ordered consciousness from feeling empty or lacking direction. It gives you that guiding star that informs your continuous self-correction, your growth, and helps you turn inevitable obstacles into meaningful opportunities to live out that purpose.
Wow, what an incredibly detailed deep dive into this human glitch. We've really explored why we self-sabotage, understanding it not as some kind of moral failing or inherent character flaw,
Right, not a sign you're broken.
but as these predictable psychological patterns rooted in fear, unworthiness, the comfort of the known, and fueled by these common cognitive distortions.
Mm.
And the biggest takeaway, it seems, is that simply noticing these glitches, catching them in action, using that first C, is truly the crucial first step.
It changes everything.
It transforms what feels like an insurmountable, shameful character flaw into a solvable, manageable problem, a bug to be debugged.
It really is about moving from that unconscious existence where fate or circumstance seems to control your reactions in your life's trajectory.
Calling it fate, as Jung said.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Moving from that to a conscious one, where you are actively, intentionally shaping your identity, your habits, and ultimately your destiny. And this journey isn't about somehow eradicating the glitch entirely. That's probably impossible because these patterns are fundamentally part of the human experience, wired in to some degree.
It's not about achieving perfection.
Not at all. Instead, it's about understanding the mechanism of the glitch, learning to navigate it with awareness and intentionality, using tools like the 3 Cs, and ultimately directing your own path despite the glitches.
And there's that powerful paradox woven through all of this, isn't there? That the human condition involves being, as some of our sources vividly put it, simultaneously worms and gods.
Yeah, both incredibly capable and incredibly vulnerable.
And accepting that inherent limitation, that creatureliness, our fallibility, our vulnerability, our messy imperfections, is actually the precondition for proper adaptation. It's not about denying the worm part to become a god.
No, it's about accepting the whole package. It's not about being perfect or eliminating every single glitch, but about accepting our inherent imperfections and learning to work with them, leveraging our unique human capacities for awareness, learning, and conscious change.
Exactly, because when we finally acknowledge that the human glitch is a psychological pattern, not a moral stain,
We unlock something powerful.
we unlock the brain's incredible inherent capacity to rewire itself for growth, for finding purpose, for building genuine fulfillment. Our very capacity for self-consciousness, the thing that allows us to see our own limits and flaws, to even contemplate our mortality, is the exact same capacity that grants us the unique, truly astonishing ability to transcend those limits.
It's profound. The psyche, our mind, our consciousness, is not just some passive reflection of physical processes. It's a factor sui generis, as Jung called it, a unique primary force in itself, capable of profoundly altering our experience of reality, our behavior, and yes, even our destiny.
And that is a seriously powerful thought to leave you all with today. But it also perfectly sets up where we're going next time. Because your brain, it is not static. It is constantly changing, undergoing physical changes due to repetition, as the habit experts remind us.
Neuroplasticity in action.
That dynamic dance between your limbic system handling those fast, raw, sometimes glitchy emotional responses, and your prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought, planning, impulse control. That interplay is absolutely key to learning healthier responses and literally rewiring those glitches over time. That biological ability for long-term potentiation means your brain can physically reshape itself, forging new connections, strengthening helpful pathways based entirely on how you choose to direct your attention and your actions.
So the actual power to unglitch yourself, to consciously change those deeply ingrained patterns, isn't just psychological wishful thinking. It is literally built into the physical architecture and adaptive capacity of your own mind.
Which is incredible. So next time, we're going to take an even deeper dive into that fascinating world of brain science. We'll explore exactly how the very structure, chemistry, and mechanisms of your mind can be actively leveraged not just to manage these glitches, but to truly transform them.
Paving the way for lifelong emotional learning, greater resilience, and building a more authentic, self-directed life, grounded in how your brain actually works.
You definitely won't want to miss that one. Join us next time on The Deep Dive.